What the hell? It's JLL, that Gnostic teacher on the internet, coming at you once again with some words about the Sophianic vision of life, the Sophianic way of life. It's December 21st, 2017, and I'm here with a Christmess message. Now, this isn't the first Christmess message I've ever given or done or tried. I've significantly dedicated, happily, a good part of my teaching work in the past to unraveling the problem of the figure of Christ and Jesus, whom I call the tar baby Jesus. So if you go to medhistory.org and you go on tar baby Jesus, you'll find a lot of previous material that I've put out regarding the Christ mess. Christ is a mess. Why is Christ a mess? It's a mess because it's a false substitute for something that humanity really needs. It's a narcotic decoy. Christ is a narcotic decoy for something that the Rome genuinely need. Do you get that? To nurture and guide them. What is that? It is the species self-identity. All other species in the world, from June bugs to cobras to giraffes to whales to donkeys to goats to puppy dogs, any other species you name in the menagerie of the magnificent biospheric laboratory of Gaia Sophia, do not require naming themselves. So your dog or your cat is a member of the canine or the feline species. It doesn't have to use the innate intelligence with which it is endowed to name itself. You do. That is why I say, call yourself Rome. It is the supreme act of self-recognition that you as an individual human person can perform, and it is also an act to identify the species self. The species self-identity is what you need. It's what humanity needs. And Christ is not it. So, with that little preface, I'm going to tell you something about Christmas. Here's my Christmess message. You can go back and look at all of the previous work I've done to deconstruct Christology and Christianity and yada, yada, yada. But this is the forward-going message. And I'll put it to you in this way. What if I told you that there is a movement in the world called interfaith, which is a single word, interfaith? And what if I told you a little bit about the credo or the founding principles of interfaith? We can find that on the internet if you go to that topic. And at the entry of the topic, to introduce you to what is interfaith, you will find 3 principles or propositions stated. And they go in this way. In the dialogue of the head, we mentally reach out to the other to learn from those who think differently from us. In the dialogue of the hands, we all work together to make the world a better place in which we must all live together. 3, in the dialogue of the heart, puppy dog hearts are fluttering around me as I speak. We share the experience of the emotions of those different from us. So there is your sugar-coated message of what are the fundamental propositions of interfaith. Interfaith dialogue is a mean. Interfaith dialogue means that all the people who belong to all the religions of the world, all the significant spiritual movements created in the past, those which continue today, those which may be some more or less obsolete or whatever, all of these wonderful paths, all leading to the same God, all leading to the same higher realization, all leading to the same fulfillment of humanity. All these wonderful paths of spirituality formulated into religious doctrines and institutions and practices come under the umbrella of interfaith. So what if I told you, what if I cited the religions under that umbrella? Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Baha'i, the Sikh religion, the Jains, the Wiccans, Unitarian Universalists, Shinto, Taoism, the Thelemites, Zoroastrianism, and probably a few more. I'm just reading from the list. On the Wikipedia entry for interfaith, they will show you a square or rectangle with 16 symbols of these world religions. 16. Getting, again, close to my territory. Don't you dare touch my sweet 16. Okay? They're getting to the 16, and they say these are the 16 spiritual religious world movements, and we all sit together in the temple of peace under the umbrella, and we all exchange views peacefully. We all recognize the truth in the vision and the religious practices and beliefs of the other. Or you're different, what you think different from me, but you have your own truth. That's interfaith. What if I tell you what interfaith is? What I just told you is true. I'm not making it up. I'm being showing a little attitude here, but I'm not distorting the facts. This is interfaith. A spin of interfaith, which you may have detected, and to which many diligent investigators have pointed, is, drumroll please, the one world religion. So the one world religion is an agenda. It's a program that some characters on this planet would like to see realized. And you can be sure that interfaith as it exists today is the gateway to the one world religion in the same way that marijuana is the gateway to heroin, It's a soft drug gateway to the hard drug. So, one world religion, interfaith, there it is, a fact in the world today, and you may be attracted to this. You may find this very appealing. You want to sit down with some devotees of Judaism and some devotees of Taoism and Zoroastrianism, and you want to sit down with the Dalai Lama over there and the Pope over there and a couple of Islamic imams over there, a number of evangelical preachers over there, a number of Zionist Christians over there. You want to sit down all in a big room all together and talk about whatever. But what if I told you that there's a significant omission in the pantheon or panoply of interfaith religions? And you know what it is, don't you? Go look at all of the interfaith material. Go look at all of the programs, the websites, the organizations around the world who promote and support interfaith, the interfaith approach. to the problem of religious and spiritual orientation on this planet. Go and look at them all. And what if I told you that they all exclude Gnosticism? Would you be surprised? Would you wonder why? Why have an interfaith movement with that stated universalist agenda and exclude Gnosticism? Why? Now, what if I told you that there's a joke contained in the interfaith program? And you can see the joke leaking out in the commentary here on this very same page, which shows the 16 symbols of these religions. I quote, "This historical effectiveness of interfaith dialogue is an issue of debate. Friar James L. Heft, in a lecture on the necessity of interfaith diplomacy, spoke about the conflicts among practitioners of the three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam." Now, end quote. Well, what if I told you that there are conflicts among the proponents and devotees of the three Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam? You wouldn't be surprised, would you, if I told you that? Look at the fucking theater of history. Look at the world today. Look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is a big charade, Punch and Judy show. Look, unfortunately, the Palestinians are Judy. They are the Judy in the Jewish Punch and Judy show. Okay? Look at history. Look at the conflict of civilizations. Look at Islam against Christianity. Oh, big surprise. There's a conflict among the Abrahamic religions, but it's a joke. It's like Worldwide Wrestling Federation. There is no conflict. They're all the same. They're all the same religion. And in fact, racially and ethnically speaking, those who adhere to Judaism and those who adhere to Islam are even of the same race. Here's a Christmas present for you. Dig down deep into the sock, way down into the toe, and pull out this little bonbon. Jews are Arabs. You can call them J-Rabs. Jews are Arabs. Arabs are Jews. They're even ethnically the same race. You know, I'll give you a key insight that perhaps you have never considered before. Even though Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are all the same belief system. It's the same belief system. Even though that is true, there is a radical tectonic division among the adherents to that singular Abrahamic faith, people of the book. A tectonic division along ethnic and racial lines. Why? Because although adherents to Judaism, Jews, and adherents to Islam, Muslims, are both of Arabian stock, they are both Arabs. Adherents to Christianity tend to be drawn from a different racial stock. You see that point? So what if I told you that the celebration of interfaith requires respect for the Abrahamic religions? It is through the Abrahamic religions. I'm going to disregard the other, 13. Just going to talk about these 3. What if I told you that the Abrahamic religions not only all have the same foundation ideologically as salvationist agendas, including a Messiah, although they don't agree on who the Messiah is? What if I told you, what if I told you my friends, that all three of the Abrahamic religions are based on the same core ritual practice. There is a core ritual practice common to all three. Now, what if I told you that the most prevalent religions in the world, which are these three out of the Interfaith 16, the most historically influential, are deeply connected with the festival of Christmas, which I call the Christmess. Now, you're going to think, well, wait a minute, what about Islam? Muslims don't celebrate Christmas, right? True. According to the Marxist multiculti brainwashing that's currently in effect, there's an attempt to bring Islam's into Christmas. So you see advertisements on British TV of large companies who want to flog products to people in the consumer madness of Christmas, showing the Goyim, the white people, the Christians, receiving their Muslim neighbors for the Christmas Eve activity and sitting around and doing all the things, but not serving pork, of course. Well, we're going to invite our Muslim neighbors, so we'll serve turkey, but we won't serve pork, right? Don't be fooled by that. The fact is that Islam has nothing to do with the celebration of this Christmas festival. Why? Well, what if I told you that Islam is nothing but one form of controlled opposition to Judaism, and Christianity is another form? In the Christian form of controlled opposition to Judaism, Christmas is accepted due to the continuity between the Old and New Testament. But in the Islamic form of controlled opposition to Judaism, the Christ Messiah motif paradigm is rejected. They get it both ways. They work both sides of the street, just like bankers from the Zenosh fund both sides of every war. Okay, now I'm going to get to the crunch. This is 18 minutes here, and I don't want to take too long this evening because I'm bored to shit by this subject. I believe bored shitless would be the more accurate and perhaps more politically correct term. Now, what if I told you, as in the yew tree, Y-E-W, which is a powerful tree of witches, what if I told you that the ritual sacrifice common to the three Abrahamic religions, which are the big talking points of interfaith, of course, is based upon one archetype that is supreme in the imagination of the human species. That archetype, if you read into mythology, if you read Jung, if you read religion, comparative mythology, the history of religions, you will find that archetype is the divine child. Now, who is the divine child? Well, it's you. You're the divine child. The Rome is the divine child. The little Jesus born in the manger is not the divine child. It's as if you went to the manger and you look down and you reach down and there's a rubber duck there. Would you accept a rubber duck, a decoy duck that hunters float in the river so they can attract real ducks and shoot them? Well, that's exactly what the Jesus child is. It's a rubber duck to attract you so you can be annihilated. You are the divine child. You are that luminous child of the Gnostic writings. You are a mortal representative of that divine child, and you are at the same time an exemplar who expresses the deathless and insuperable power of that child. And this has absolutely nothing to do with Christ. Delete, remove that corrupted file from your mental syntax. Now, what if I told you, what if I reminded you of the point that I made in the Gnostic investigation of the Mandela effect? Namely, that you cannot have a master race ideology without having a program of genocide attached to it. So, the master race ideology of the Xenosh has a genocidal program attached to it. What am I going to call it? It's not the event, the ploy, the tactic. Okay, this is good. The tactic of accusatory inversion is extremely useful to the Xenosh in concealing this point. So the Xenosh accuse others of doing to them what they are in fact doing to those others. That's accusatory inversion. When you look past the tactic and the ploy and the misdirection of accusatory inversion, what you see, plain and simple, right out in front, is the master race ideology linked to a genocidal program, linked to the archetype of the divine child. So what you're actually celebrating on Christmas is the genocide of the divine child, not the birth of the Messiah. You're celebrating the actual opposite of what you think you're celebrating, or not you, but those who celebrated it. And I would also point out that the consumer madness, the materialistic, false materialistic consumer madness around Christmas is also, it's a snow job. Isn't that the term? A snow job means when you blitz someone with something, like in a snowstorm, so that they don't actually see what's happening. Is that the right term? Snow job. Christmas consumerism, giving gifts, spreading cheer and joy to all the world and embracing your Muslim neighbors is a snow job to distract the masses from the very great fact that they're actually celebrating the sacrifice of the divine child. They are celebrating their own annihilation with the ribbons and the bows and the packages, wrapping the packages and choosing the gifts and hanging the socks and hanging the lights. It's all a celebration of the annihilation of the precious child that is Rome. Now, what if I told you that there is a ritual sacrifice at the very core of the Abrahamic religions? Would that ring a bell? Would that lead you to any associations? Well, I suspect it does, quite easily and quite immediately. And what if I told you that this ritual sacrifice, which is imaginatively linked to the image of the divine child, is actually a real and existential act? It's not a symbolic sacrifice. It's actual sacrifice, a blood sacrifice. So is there a blood sacrifice ritual at the root of the Abrahamic religions? Duh. I think that should be a Homer Simpson, duh, should be broadcast like through, speakers at Wembley or something, at 659 decibels or whatever. Duh. Look at the Old Testament. The institution of the Abrahamic religions is depicted in a number of narrative anecdotes, one of which is that the patriarch of the Abrahamic religions, of all three of them, is required to sacrifice his son to the alien off-planet father god, Yahweh, Yaldabaoth, the Lord Archon. The archons crack into the human mind, induce insanity in Abraham, and convince him that he must prove his dedication to the off-planet archontic powers by sacrificing his son. Now, as the narrative goes, the narrative is misleading. Every story in the narrative of the ancient Hebrews is borrowed, distorted, warped, rigged in order to lie and deceive you. The way the story is rigged is you hear that, well, Abraham did not in fact murder his son. He just had to show the willingness to be able to do so. But he didn't have to commit that gruesome deed because at a certain moment he had a vision of a ram with its horns caught in a bush. And then he went and he took the ram and he sacrificed the ram as a substitute. That's misdirection. That's deception. That's a story scripted specifically to convince you that there is no human male child sacrifice. Oh, good grief. Oh, what a terrible story. Father commanded by an invisible, untouchable, off-planet deity to murder his own child. Oh, what a relief that he didn't have to do it. No, not his child. You say, not his. But that is not to say that such a sacrificial murder of a child did not occur. That is not to say that it does not occur. In recorded history, over and over again. And that is not to say that it's not occurring right now. Because you can believe your sorry ass that it is. And everyone who falls into the Christmas insanity is not only being distracted and misled from the recognition of this heinous crime against humanity, the greatest transgression imaginable, child sacrifice, but at the same time, perversely, they are invited to participate in and celebrate that sacrifice. What if I told you that there are many lies about Christmas, and I'm sure you know many of them already? And in my humble view as a Gnostic teacher, one of the essential lies is that Christmas pretends to celebrate the birth of the divine child, whereas actually it celebrates the ritual sacrifice of the living human child. What if I told you that the sacred ritualistic practice at the core of the Abrahamic religions is child sacrifice? Especially, particularly, and most exceptionally, the sacrifice in a ritual manner by ritual wounding and bleeding white, a white child. May you have a merry white Christmas. And when you celebrate it, think of the whiteness of the skin of a 5-year-old white child bled dry in a ritual sacrifice. There you are. How does that picture sit on your stomach? Now, in conclusion, allow myself to make 2 points. First point concerns, again, the exclusion of Islam and Muslims. Now, it is a fact that even those who celebrate, elevate, and emulate and promote Abrahamic religion all agree upon. It is a fact that the foundational deed of Judaic religion was the Abrahamic sacrifice of the child. It is a fact that any Christian will agree with, that the supreme distinguishing feature of Christianity is the sacrifice of the divine child for the sake of humanity. Child sacrifice is the basis of the Abrahamic religions, and it's not a fracking metaphor. Do you hear me? Now, you can say, yes, but John, why do you throw Islam in there? Well, you see, because the agenda of the Zenosh has 2 objectives. One is murder, and the other is enslavement, submission, Islam. So it is clearly stated in certain Talmudic scriptures, which are closely observed and implemented by all the leading Zenosh on the planet, that the master race has 2 objectives regarding the other races, all the other nations, the Goyim. One is to either eliminate them and wipe them out and sacrifice their children, their white children. And the other is to enslave those that they generously and mercifully allow to live. Why is Allah so merciful? Allah is merciful because that is the message in the coming from the controlled opposition of Islam that says to you, well, we won't behead you and we won't kill you, although we'll threaten to do so, but submit to Islam and you can become our slaves. So murder and enslavement are the 2 objectives of the program of religious indoctrination on this planet, to which every person on this planet has been submitted, subjected. And I tell you, on this Christmas day of 2017, that just as surely as the Nasdaq movement and the Third Reich and the German people led by their leader, their Führer, stood up against the Zenosh on the stage of history in a unique and unparalleled event of defiance, just so the Gnostics stood up against this ideology. And for that, you will not find them included in the interfaith pantheon of religions. I rest my case. So those are the 2 points, my little Christmas chat. And those are the 2 points of the takeaway of this talk. Namely, that Islam does not obviously depict the sacrifice of the divine child as you see clearly in the Old Testament story of Abraham and in the New Testament story of Jesus the Messiah, because it represents the second objective of the Xenosh, which is enslavement of the living rather than extermination. And secondly, my takeaway point is, Gnosis is not an alternative religion. Sophianic animism, which I teach you to embody, is not an alternative religion. It's the alternative to all religions. Gnosticism cannot be included in the interfaith groups because Gnosticism is the semtex that destroys all other religious belief systems. So that's it. There's my Christmas message to all you out there who follow this channel. I just want to say, in the spirit of the season, that I'm happy and grateful for the following, student following, not disciple following, that I have, which is developing through this medium on the internet as long as it lasts. So there you have it, and I'll close as usual, reminding you to heed the obvious. I mean, it's now obvious to you that the Abrahamic religions are based on the ritual of child sacrifice. Not to mention the cannibalism and blood drinking that was introduced by the Catholic Church, which is another charade and another vaudeville act to fascinate and captivate the Goyim. Heed the obvious and hold to correction. There's your best chance for a future worth living.